Hey everybody, welcome to the 61st edition of Drive-Thru Review. Today I'm going to talk about Belfort. It is a European style game from Tasty Minstrel Games, placed 2 to 5. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now I like this game. I like it a whole lot. It has a lot of typical Euro mechanisms kind of smashed together in an effective way. It's got a theme and a style of art that isn't usual for European games. Let me just go right up into how it works, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about why I like it when I come back. Let me give you first a quick kind of high-level overview of all of the components in the game. Now here you've got your main board, which comes apart in 5 different sections, and all of the sections are identical in terms of which buildings are on there, and each of them has a guild tile that is randomly drawn from a set of 12 possible tiles. There's 5 out on the board here. And these guilds come in a variety of sort of makeups here. They have an interactive guilds, basic guilds, and resource guilds. And depending on the type of game that you want to play, you can either kind of pick these on your own or randomly pick from a certain number of each of these types of guilds. You've got these player boards, which I'll show in more detail in just a second. Lots of wooden pieces you can see down here on the left. There's a clipboard up here with some cards and some gnome tokens, and then a resource board up here, and you can see a lot of resource types up there. So let me zoom in and show you a little bit about how each of these works, and then a little bit about the gameplay. First, let me highlight these exquisite player boards. There's a lot of information on here, and it's presented in a very useful way. So first off, you've got a little turn summary over here, possible actions that the players can do, or sort of an order of operations. You've got all the costs for the different buildings and walls, etc., that you can build here. Scoring for the different scoring rounds that are going to happen in the game, as well as sort of little places to put all of the little tokens and markers that the players are going to get. It also tells you what the starting amount is. So if you can see that, it says you start with 5 gold there, 3 dwarves, 3 elves, etc. So these are really well done, very colorful, but also very useful and informative in how the information is presented to the player. As I said before, players will start off with 3 dwarves and 3 elves, and these are sticker blocks that the players will have to sticker. And during the game, the players will have the opportunity to get more of these workers, as well as upgrading the workers to what's called a master dwarf, or in this case here, a master elf. Players will also get a set of wooden houses, which will be used when a player creates a building. They can place it on the board to mark their ownership of that building or possibly of a guild. In addition to 5 gold coins, players will also start off with 1 wood, 1 stone, and 1 metal bar. And these pieces are pretty nice. This looks like a silver bar or metal bar, and this is a nice sort of log looking piece. And these are the 3 resource types in the game. Finally, players will start with a hand of 5 cards. Now these are possible buildings that the player could build in the game. So the way that these cards are broken down is here you've got the name of the card, and then up here you've got the cost. So in this case it takes 3 wood, 1 stone, and 1 metal bar to build this building. Additionally, there will be sometimes lock icons on this card, and players will need to acquire a special type of worker that they don't start with, and those are these gnomes here. And once they get a gnome and put it on the building, then it will unlock various abilities for that building. In this case, if you unlock this building here, this will allow players to place one of their dwarves or elves, as well as paying a gold. You can see that here indicated by the gold in the middle. They can place that on there to receive a new dwarf or elf. And there's a variety of buildings, a variety of effects, and these really kind of makes up, really a lot of the meat of the game. So if we look at the turn structure here, this is the order that the players will be performing the actions in the game. First thing you're going to do is move the calendar marker, and I'll show that in a minute. That's basically just the turn order marker moving. Then you've got placement of workers, and then collecting of resources, and then any actions that the player may take from any workers that have been placed, and as well as additional actions like building buildings and walls, etc. So let's first take a look at placement. So early on in the game, about the only place that you're going to be placing any workers is on these guild spaces here. And you can see this guild, for example, will let you collect 3 coins, whereas this guild will let you collect 4 logs. And there's a variety of different effects and resources and etc. that you can gather. I'm not going to go into all of them at all. But this is going to be an early game. There's going to be a lot of jockeying and fighting for these guild tiles and the effects that they produce. Later on in the game, players will be able to put workers on some of the buildings that they've built. So in this case, if you put a dwarf or an elf here, you can collect a steel bar, and then this one will let you actually draw some more cards and then discard cards, etc. And there's a whole bunch of effects here as well. Finally, we have the resource board, and for now I want you to ignore this whole top row. I'll explain that in just a second. On the bottom of the resource board, we've got two spaces here. This first space, if they place a dwarf or an elf on this spot and pay 2 coins, then at the end of the turn, or excuse me, when they go to collect resources, they will get a copy of whatever they put here. So if they put a dwarf there, they'll get another dwarf worker. If they put an elf worker, they'll get another elf worker. And you can see these spaces are limited based on the number of players. If it's a 2 or 3 player game, only one of these is open, and then this one opens up at 4, and this one opens up at 5. On this side, we have the King's Camp, and this is where you exchange turn order markers, and let me explain that real quick. So if I go in here like so, then I'm going to get the first 2 exchange turn order markers. Well, at the beginning of the game, turn order markers are randomly handed out to each player and placed on their player boards. So if I was player number 3 in this case, I could put this here and then say, okay, I'm going to change my 3rd place turn order marker with the 1st place player, and I'll take that, and what I'm going to do is flip this over so that for the duration of this sequence here, this 1st place marker can no longer be taken. Now finally, let's look at the top spaces on this board. Now players are not going to directly place workers in there as a placement action. What they're going to do is they're going to place workers elsewhere, either on the bottom here, on the main board, or on one of their buildings, and then they're going to effectively pass. And what they're going to do is take all the workers that they had left when they passed, that they had not yet placed, and then place them however they like up here. So if this was the situation, the white player had placed where he wanted to place, then they had these tokens left, this is what they might do. So if you look over here, this elf will give you 1 wood. So that basically means for each elf in there, you're going to get a wood. So he put 2 elves in there, he's going to get 2 wood. In the same way, dwarves will retrieve you stone. For each dwarf, you get a stone. To get metal bars, you have to have a set of 1 elf and 1 dwarf. So any set of these will give you 1 metal bar. Over here, any dwarf or elf will give you 1 coin. So it could be either or. So in this case, I could get a coin from the dwarf. Now there's 2 other sort of little tricks to this. And this is where the upgraded master workers come into play. These actually count as 2 workers. So if I had this dwarf that I had upgraded previously to a master dwarf and had that there, it would actually retrieve me 2 coins. And if I had this one upgraded, I would get 2 stone. And this way, if I had one of these elves upgraded, I would get 1, 2, 3 wood. The second part of this is whoever has the most workers in one of these spots will get a bonus item. So for example, if the purple player had placed these 2 elves here, he would have the most workers. So he would get his 2 coins plus an additional coin for having the most workers. Now the thing to keep in mind though is, even though this is a master dwarf, it only counts for in terms of gathering the resource. It doesn't count as actually 2 actual workers. So the elf still has the most workers because he's got the most tokens in here. So the dwarf would still get his 2, the elf would get 2 plus 1 for having the most. And all of these spaces work in the same manner. So after placing all the workers, everybody passed and put some tokens up here. We're going to resolve everything in this order. We're going to go through and resolve all the resources for everybody, get any additional workers that players wanted out of this, and then exchange turn order markers. This is going to happen immediately, so that in terms of taking the additional actions after the placement phase, that's going to happen right away. So if you get the 1st place marker, you're going to take your actions first. And then at the end, you can see this space here. You're going to collect income from the buildings and then pay taxes. So let me explain that quickly. So you can see that some of these buildings that you build will give you income, like the keep will give you 1 coin, the library give you a coin. Not all of them do. So at this point in time, you're going to collect income from the buildings that you've placed. Additionally, depending on where your score marker is on the scoring track, you're also going to have to pay taxes. So you can see that each half of these boards, the taxes are going to go up. So if you're early on, you're actually not going to pay any taxes. But if you were in this bracket here, you'd pay 1 coin for tax, and then 2, and then 3, and so on around the board. If you can't pay this number of coins, you're going to pay whatever you can, and then you're going to lose a point for each coin that you cannot pay. So after placing your workers, collecting resources, getting income, and paying taxes, you're going to be able to take actions then based on your turn order marker. So in this case, you're going to be able to build walls, properties, even guilds, activate any workers that you may still have out on the board. Then you can visit the clipboard, I like to call it, and that's these last three actions. So let me explain those first. So in addition to the turn track up at the top, there's basically three areas or three actions you can take with this board. First of all, you can buy a gnome for 3 coins. Now you have to have already built a building. In this case, let's say I had built the gardens over here and had a lock space that was free to place that on. You can't buy a gnome unless you've got a spot to put it. And so you can only visit this spot once per turn. Likewise, you can only visit the trading post down here once per turn. When you visit this, you get 1 sell action and 1 buy action. And this basically is telling you can sell 1 silver bar for a coin, or 2, any combination of wood or stone, 2 stone, 2 wood, or 1 of each for a coin. And then you can also buy 1 of each of those, a stone or a wood for a coin, or buy a steel for 2 coins. So it's in the market's favor, in the game's favor, not in the player's favor here. But this is going to be a key aspect. And there's actually buildings, such as the market, that will allow you to visit the trading post more than once. And that's going to be key when players want to exchange resources. The last thing that you can do here, and it must be the last action on your turn, is to pay 1 coin and draw a card either from the face-up display of 3 cards that will be showing, or right off the top of the deck. You can do as many actions as you want and you can afford, but if you do this, it has to be your last action. In effect, you cannot build a building that you just purchased for. Now let's talk about the main sort of aspect of this game, is building buildings. Well, you can see I pulled aside one of these sections to show you this. And like I said before, all of the sections are exactly the same. Well, you can see on these building cards there are a couple of icons at the top here. You've got your inn, your garden, and your blacksmith. And you can find each of those icons on the board. So here's our garden, our blacksmith, and then our inn here. So if I were to go and build this inn, I would pay the cost, put this in front of me, and then I would go and choose one of these sections. I could choose any section I wanted and then put my marker there. In the same sense, if I built a garden, I could go and put my marker here. And this is how you're going to score the game. So basically, you're going to score an area majority. Whoever has the most houses in an area will get 5 points. Whoever has the second most in an area will get 3 points. And in a 4-player or more game, whoever has third will get 1. As well as scoring who has the most dwarves, the most elves, and the most gnomes. So for example, whoever has the most dwarves will get 3 points, whoever has second most will get 1 point, and so on for each worker type. In addition to buildings that are represented by cards, you can also build a guild and also a wall. Now the walls don't have any cards for them, so that if you build a wall, you just put the marker there as usual. And then in addition, you can build a guild, and all the guilds have the same build cost of 2 wood, 2 stone, and 2 metal bars. They all cost the same. When you do that, you'll put your little house there next to the guild, and from now on, when other players place at this guild to use it as a resource, instead of paying this coin to the bank, they'll pay it to you. And you can also place there for free. And it also counts as part of the area control. Now scoring is only going to happen on the 3rd, 5th, and 7th round of play. So each time this marker hits one of these X's, you're going to score. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that overview. I did tell you I liked it before I started, so if you're still watching, I'll tell you a little bit more about why I like it. There's a lot going on in this game, and initially it's sort of overwhelming, but the rulebook is laid out in a great way. It's a very humorous rulebook in some sense. Let me just tell you the subtitle: A Gnomish Guide to Royal Construction Methods and Practices, Rules and Red Tape. So the basic sort of story or theme behind the game is that as gnomes and dwarves and elves are known to do, they're sort of bumbling fools, and they've hired too many architects and too many sort of managers and subcontractors to help build the city. So they don't care, they've hired everybody to do it, so everybody's kind of ramshackle, building stuff wherever they want it. And so that's sort of the theme behind the game, which is, it's somewhat hilarious. But there's a lot this game reminds me of, so let me talk a little bit about that. It reminds me partly of Caelus, where you're putting a worker down, you've got to pay the worker. You usually have to pay a coin place to worker, and I like that. I like that it keeps the money aspect of it. In addition to just blocking and stuff like that, you have to work out economically what people are going to be able to afford or what you're going to be able to afford from turn to turn. And I've always really liked that about Kalis a lot. You've got the cards, and that kind of reminds me of Agricola. In a sense, Agricola is just a massive headache of cards. I like that game, but this is a little simpler. You've got the buildings, and there's ability effects and abilities, and the fact that the cards are kind of driving maybe strategically and somewhat tactically what you're doing. I really like that aspect of it. There's other abilities to draw more cards, and you may purchase a card knowing you're not going to build it, but you really don't want this person to get like the keep, for example, or other things. And I'm trying not to talk too much strategy, because that's really the aspects of the game I like, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I did show you in the video the market, and I would just say markets are good. All the buildings are good, and the area control, let's talk about that. There are certain buildings that will sort of branch over the section, so when you build it, then you can kind of bleed into the other section through some different effects and abilities. And so that's there's a lot of neat little ways to tinker there. And then the components are ridiculous. Not only is the game really, I think, well balanced and well designed and developed, but the components have been really well developed. And I know that design's been kicking around for a couple of years, I believe, from what I've sort of read of the designer's diary. And you can really tell that a lot of effort and work went into this game. And it's really a pleasure to play, to open up, to show to people. And everything is really well done. This was not something that was, an overnight deal at all. And you can tell, like, as soon as you open the box and you look at the rule book and the illustrations in the rule book and the illustrations on the board, and just the little details that you're going to find, after a few plays, and probably, after several plays, are just all those details are going to come right across. And it's a new take sort of on a Euro, and I could keep talking and talking and talking. Hopefully you've closed the video and either put the game out on the table or ordered it or something. So I really like this game. It reminds me of a lot of things, and not derivative really, but different enough and fun enough that I think is accessible to lots of people. So other than rambling on, I'm just going to say thanks and enjoy.